Good morning, everybody. The time is 9:36 a.m. I would like to call to order this meeting of the Alameda County Lead Poisoning Prevention Programs Joint Powers Authority. This meeting is being conducted in a hybrid format, and members of the public may join us at the Emeryville Civic Hall, located at 1333 Park Avenue, or by joining us via Zoom using the webinar address provided for in today's agenda. And members of the public may make comment either in person or online at any point during today's agenda when called for by the chair. This time I'll begin by asking if the clerk would please take the roll.
Director Hardy, Director Miley, Director Spencer, Director Wengraf,
Present.
Director Gallo,
Present.
Director Bowders.
Here.
Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Now is the time for public comment. A member of the public wishing to give comment for an item within the jurisdiction of the agency but not on the agenda for today will have 2 minutes to give comment. There are no members present at the podium today. Are there any members online or who have submitted written comments for this meeting?
No comment.
Comment is now closed. We'll turn to agenda item number 3, which is the consent items. The meeting minutes of January 25th, 2024 are before you. Are there any members who wish to give comment or ask questions on the minutes? Seeing and hearing none, is there public comment on the minutes?
No comment.
Seeing and hearing none, is there any discussion? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Okay,
Move approval.
Second.
thank you. Motion by Wengraf and a second by Gallo. Please call the roll.
Director Hardy,
This is a yes or no on the minutes, Director Hardy?
Say
Aye or no?
Aye.
Hardy, aye. Director Miley, absent. Director Spencer, abstain. Director Wengraf,
Aye.
Director Wengraf, aye. Director Gallo,
Aye.
Gallo, aye. Director Bowders.
Aye.
Bowders, aye.
All right, thank you. The consent calendar has been approved. We'll turn to item 4, which is the director's report. Director Brooks.
Good morning, directors, and welcome back, Director Spencer, or at least temporarily. It's good to see you. I hadn't seen you in a few years. Let's see, I do have a slide presentation to run you through right quick. Let's see if we can bring it up. Otherwise, I'll just read through my notes here. It's in notes view. Can you change the view to slide view?
It's coming. There you go.
There we go. Yes. So this is February Black History Month, so I did want to acknowledge that. In the next slide here, in recognition of Black History Month, I just wanted to remind people who may be in the audience, I know you're already aware of the fact that although we are the Child Lead Poisoning Prevention Program, and this is the Lead Poisoning Prevention Board of Directors for the JPA, we are also known as the Alameda County Healthy Homes and Child Lead Poisoning Prevention Program. And there's a reason for that. And if we go to the next slide, you'll see that in recognition of Black History Month, I wanted to acknowledge the work that was done by Congressman Louis Stokes. We kind of see him as the founder of the Healthy Homes Lead Poisoning Prevention Movement. He used an incident where President H.W. Bush's dog became lead poisoned during a White House renovation project to push his agenda for healthy housing that included things like asthma reduction and radon and asbestos and a number of other issues related to healthy housing. And it was because of some of these quotes like the one you see here in the slide, he was able to use that to push the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to establish the Office of Healthy Housing and Lead Poisoning Prevention. So the Black History Month just wanted to acknowledge those achievements by Congressman Louis Stokes in helping to bring us to where we are today. Next slide is an update from last month. I wasn't here. Deputy Director April Williamson provided you all with an update on where we were in terms of the minor home repair, rental minor home repair, and also the HUD lead hazard control grants. And as she indicated, we were struggling to find people who were interested in applying for those different programs. And so I worked with the county assessor to pull together a database where we were able to identify what we think were rental properties. It ended up the file had about 20,000 addresses, which we assumed were rentals based on a query criteria that was used to search the assessor's database, which included things like where does the property tax bill go? Is there a homeowner's exemption on this property? Is it a multi-unit property, et cetera, et cetera? April did a lot of work on this as well. And what it illustrated to me was why it's so important to try to have something like a rental registry or include rentals in the business license database, because it took us a few months uh, trying to get this. And then once we finally got it and we sent the letters out, we actually did begin to get some responses from property owners who were saying, oh, we didn't know that these programs existed. We're interested. Please contact us. Let us know how we can apply. Um, as a result of that, we are very confident now that we are going to meet the HUD Lead Hazard Control Grant goals, which is 144 units are supposed to go through lead paint remediation under that grant. And we think that we're going to achieve that now, whereas before we were really sweating it because we were reaching out, talking to the rental housing associations, doing social media, print media, radio ads, everything, and we just weren't getting anywhere. So it was a kind of surprise to find out, and maybe not a surprise to find out that many people still respond to letters. One of my assumptions is that many rental properties are owned by mom and pop landlords, as they call them, and many mom and pop landlords are my age or older, and my age group does read letters. And so maybe we were doing, maybe almost wasting time reaching out on social media to try to hit the landlords to get them interested in this. Um, so we also have a HUD grant that starts this summer where we have 4 years to do 120 units of lead paint remediation. And again, we feel much more confident based on the responses that we're now getting from the letters that we will be able to meet those goals in 4 years. However, unfortunately, I have to say that we have not been getting much of a response from the landlords, or as they like to be called, rental housing providers, with regards to the American Rescue Plan Act funding that we were offering for rental minor home repair. As you know, for years now, through community development block grant funds, we've offered a minor home repair program to low-income property owners, disabled and elderly in certain cities that we're contracted with, like the city of Oakland. I've been doing that for decades. It was decided a little over a year or so ago to give us some funding to try to do this, a similar program with rental minor home repairs, offer the same types of repairs to rental property owners. And again, we've reached out in all different ways we could think of. I've attended a few rental expos. Staff has attended a lot of rental housing association events, trying to get the word out, and we just haven't been able to get landlords to bite. And so as a result of that, it was suggested that we return the funds to Housing Community Development within our own agency. And they're proposing to use that money to help fund a landlord assistance center for one thing. There's also some talk about putting that money to replenish the emergency rental assistance program. And there's a number of other ideas that are being presented to HCD for how the money could be used. So um, again, it's unfortunate that we weren't able to reach the rental housing providers to get them to use the ARPA money, but it does appear that the money will be used in one way or another to help maintain rental properties. Um, One of the other problems that we've had, even with our HUD grants too, is that we continue to struggle with obtaining the needed documentation from clients who are concerned about disclosing their personal information to staff. And yet, in order to qualify for these grants, we do require certain information to prove that the money is going to be used to assist low-income tenants. But in the current environment, we have tenants who are afraid to give us that income documentation information. We have rental housing providers or landlords who are also reluctant to try to help us get that information. As a result of that, I think that also hurt us in terms of the use of the American Rescue Plan Act funding because we ran that program just like we do a HUD lead hazard control grant program. We had the same income documentation requirements. On that note, next slide here. This is an article about Congress proposing deep cuts in funding to control lead hazards. I want to read that. $564.2 million in funds appropriated in previous years that HUD had not obligated by executing a grant or contract. This proposed rescission represents almost half of the total funding that Congress appropriated for the grants in the three prior years. Again, I believe that the reason why HUD has struggled with this is because of the current environment that we are working in which we can't get information from tenants or landlords in order to qualify people for these HUD grants. And so it's been a real struggle to get people to apply for the grants. And as I mentioned just a moment ago, we're having some success now that we sent those letters out, but it's still a struggle. And for many cities and counties, they have not applied for HUD grants for that reason. And as a result of that, HUD has not been able to use the money, and now Congress is talking about taking it back. Lead and healthy housing organizations are writing letters to ask Congress to reconsider while providing statistics on the number of households in need of lead and healthy housing services. After this meeting, I'll be meeting with our county federal legislative analysts to also express concerns and to try to even take it a step further and identify the specific changes that I believe are necessary in order to increase the number of HUD grantees. Next slide, please. In addition, I was asked by some of my public health colleagues to meet with Professor Zoe Hamstead of University of California, Berkeley Department of City and Regional Planning regarding research she is currently undertaking in surveying and conducting focus groups with landlords with regards to energy efficiency providers and tenants to better understand the challenges and barriers for landlords to participate in healthy homes and energy efficiency programs. After a couple of meetings that I arranged for Professor Hamstead with the executive directors for the East Bay Rental Housing Association and the Rental Housing Association of Southern Alameda County, as a result of those meetings with those two rental housing associations, I think we'll be able to help the professor with this study, and perhaps it will result in our obtaining some data to further use in our recommendations to HUD that they change some of the requirements for these different federal programs that are designed to assist with preserving rental housing. Next slide. Okay, it was also noted in the minutes that because I missed last month's meeting, that's why Deputy Director April Williamson gave you the update on the department. I could not be present because I was attending the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers Board meeting, and it was mentioned in the minutes that I would report on back on that. The meeting lasted 3 hours and included discussions on helping code officers to implement a few mandated programs, including Assembly Bill 838, which you see there on the slide. It was something that was led by the Western Center on Law and Poverty, requires all cities and counties to have a tenant complaint response program for substandard housing that includes complaints about lead hazards. We talked about the implementation of this bill quite a bit. Initially, I was opposed to the bill. I have to admit now I was wrong. I think the Western Center on Law and Poverty had it right in that there are a lot of jurisdictions that do not have tenant complaint response programs. And without those tenant complaint response programs, it again weakens our ability in terms of leverage to get landlords to accept grants to do repairs on their rentals. And unfortunately, I have to even point out that our own unincorporated county did not have a tenant complaint response program until this law went into effect. Again, even though I was initially opposed to it, and so was the California Association of Code Enforcement Officers, we relented when we began to collect data and see how many cities and counties don't have tenant complaint response programs. Part of it is out of fear that it'll create increased workload on code enforcement officers and that local government will not be able to uh, cover some of those costs. Um, we hear all the time from the state legislators that code enforcement has the ability to charge code enforcement fees, reinspection fees, fines and penalties. What our state legislators seem to forget is that local government has to impose those fees. They have to vote for ordinances to allow for fee increases. And oftentimes in our current environment, we do not see cities and counties actually voting for ordinances to increase fees on the landlords. Um, So there was quite a bit of discussion about how do we encourage our fellow code enforcement officers to come into compliance. We agreed that we're going to be providing some workshops, some trainings with continuing education credit in order to try to encourage them to understand the law better and to begin to implement. Next slide. Um, the other bill that there was a lot of discussion about that day at the board meeting was AB 548, Housing Inspection Program, which actually originated in the city of Fremont, but it was no longer conducted there um, because, again, of funding issues. But the former chief of code enforcement for the city of Fremont came to the California Healthy Housing Coalition and told them about the model, and the California Healthy Housing Coalition championed that bill. Again, California Association of Code Enforcement Officers, we were initially opposed out of concern of the budgetary impacts, but again, had to relent and acknowledge the fact that oftentimes when responding to a complaint, if you have a complaint program to begin with, to a complaint about lead hazards or, for example, mold or pests, that oftentimes if you go to the unit and you confirm those violations, there's a good possibility that if there are units next door, above, or below, they'll have similar problems. And under AB 548, code enforcement officers are now obligated to check those adjoining units. As I said, again, it was something that we reluctantly supported. City of Oakland now is actually talked about utilizing this bill to enact a program in place of a proactive rental inspection program. As you know, we've talked for many years about a proactive rental inspection program. It has been decided by Oakland Chief Building Official Christopher Ragland that the proactive rental inspection program is probably not feasible, even with the use of lead paint settlement money. And so they're looking at this, what they call PRIP light. If you kind of get the metaphor, Pepsi would be considered a proactive rental inspection program. AB 548 is like the Diet Pepsi version. And that's what Oakland is considering at this point in time. I have gone on record as not being in support of PRIP light. I really believe that if we're going to get units for our lead hazard control grants, units for American Rescue Plan Act money, that we actually need that leverage of going in and doing routine inspections on units, identifying the violations, and then notifying landlords that you have to do something. You don't have to take the money we have for you that's free, but you have to do something. So I have opposed PRIP light, but at best, we will have cities and counties now under AB 548 doing something like a PRIP light. Next slide. The last thing we talked about at the Code Enforcement Association meeting was an update on Senate Bill 655, which was established back in 2016, which empowered code enforcement officers to address mold in rental units. We had noticed that there had been a drop-off California Department of Public Health had informed us that a lot of jurisdictions were not responding to mold complaints. And so we talked about putting together some trainings in order to encourage code enforcement officers to comply with the law from 2016. In fact, I moderated a webinar yesterday. We had over 160 code enforcement officers from all over the state that attended it. And I believe that we will be doing more trainings like that in order to encourage code enforcement officers to come into compliance with Senate Bill 655. Let's see, almost done here. Next slide. There was some acknowledgement of me at the board, so I had to throw that up there. Partially for the support that I've given to the National Women Leaders in Code Enforcement Organization, which is one of the fastest growing code enforcement associations in the country, and also for the work that I've been doing with the California Healthy Housing Coalition. I do that work in part because of those bills that were passed that I just talked to you about. I really want our code enforcement officers across the nation to be capable of doing routine rental inspection programs and to be able to identify in particular lead and mold hazards so that we can begin to make better use of the federal funds that are provided to us. And then last slide here, just noted that Rebuilding Together Oakland announced they're shutting down. They have been a tremendous partner of ours in the work that we've done over the years. And I'm hoping that Lisa, the executive director, in talking to her, it sounds like she's still going to be doing something in the field of workforce development and healthy housing. So wishing her the best. But I know when they announced it, I had told our board of supervisors about it, and they were not aware. So I figured, okay, I should make people aware of the fact that Rebuilding Together Oakland doesn't exist anymore. But I believe Rebuilding Together North Bay out of Berkeley is still going strong. That concludes my report. You can shut down the PowerPoint slide. There we go. Questions?
Thank you. Before we take questions, are there any members of the public who wish to give comment on item 4?
No comment?
Thank you. Comment is closed. Directors with questions or comments? I have a couple questions. I wanted to go back to your points about the ARPA grant. And you said there's not that that people weren't taking up the funding, the minor home repair grant. Was that just within the space of the lead hazard control program, or was that general?
Yeah, that was the surprising thing about the letters. People are responding saying they're interested in the HUD grants, not in big numbers, but at least more than the numbers we were receiving. But it's just been a steady trickle in terms of the ARPA money. I mean, part of it is it's confined to the unincorporated area. If we could do it countywide, maybe we would get more. But in talking with the rental housing providers, like attending their expos and things, the feedback I've gotten is it's very difficult to get the income verification money that you require in order to qualify. I'm not in one of the qualified census tracts. Or I've even heard the pushback of, well, I don't want you to go into my unit to do $7,500 worth of repairs because that's the limit. And then you go in there and you find that, my tenant has tore up the unit and there really needs to be $20,000 worth of repairs. And now I'm stuck with $13,000 of repairs because you, Larry, are going to go and tell code enforcement. So that's the kind of stuff that I think contributed to the lack of interest from the landlords.
Yeah, I'll just say I've been working on a project in Emeryville. I have a senior citizen African-American woman who was a child care provider here for 40 years. She has she has no family, no children, and was never married. And she has a series of disabilities, and she lives in a classic Emeryville walk-up type of house. and needs to have that house retrofitted. She had a contract with a developer who was supposed to do repairs, who put giant holes in her walls on the downstairs to turn that into a living space for her, but never finished the job and then just retired and moved to Arkansas. And I have been working on this project for a while in partnership with the county, and we applied through Rebuilding Together to have this work done. And the county told us that in order to get the minor home repair grant, that the wait list for us to have the inspection from them to get approval for that $25,000 is 9 months. And she can't possibly live in her home for 9 months in her condition, waiting to find out if she's going to get $25,000 from the county. So I'm just curious because I've heard from others who've tried to access the minor home repair grant, and I've been working on one of them in particular, that the wait lists and the times for people at the county, whether it's, and so I'm curious if the lead inspection is different than other types of repairs in that grant program. People can't wait 9 months to find out if they're getting $25,000 if you're a 75-year-old woman living alone and you have holes in your walls and rats are coming in your house. I mean, it's just really an unsafe and unhealthy condition. And so in our case, we're going through other channels to get that funded for her to make sure she can stay in her home. But I listened to this, and it's just curious to me when I heard you say that people aren't applying for it and they're not following through. My experience is that nobody wants to wait 9 months to have someone come do the assessment. So just feedback for you, and whether that's the same program or the lead program versus not, I don't know the details on that, but I'll just tell you that's our experience here. My question on Rebuilding Together was, when is it shutting down in Oakland?
It shut down last week.
It's done already. Yeah, I'm surprised they didn't tell anybody that in advance. Because we're working with them, but it must be through the Berkeley location for a couple of projects. And then my other question, you kind of got to it, but you said that the $564 million in grants that the federal government, there may be rescission of the funding. You said, people aren't wanting to provide the documentation, et cetera. And advocates are asking for there to be more time and not to recapture this money. But like, what is going to change? You said you have changes in mind, but like, what are you going to change? Asking for more time so that we can put this money where it belongs, I'm supportive of. But if we're just going to still be asking for people to turn in documents that they can't or don't want to turn in, like, what is proposed to be changed in the administration of it?
Yeah, I think that's where we really need the help of our elected officials to notify Congress that there needs to be a change in the regulations as far as the requirements for the use of the HUD Lead Hazard Control Grant monies. I've had folks from cities and counties say that they don't want to apply for the grants because, I mean, it's a competitive process, and we've been fortunate to be able to receive the grant for 30 years now. But I have to acknowledge it's getting tougher and tougher. We almost didn't do it. The amount of money, that matching funds that have to be put up for the grant, the fact that the amount of admin costs covered by the grant has continued to go down. And of course, the difficulty, especially in this climate where after the pandemic and the eviction moratorium, the landlords and the tenants are like this, and it's really hard to be able to get in between them and say, we really want to give this money to you and help to improve your rental, improve the health and housing conditions of your tenants. All those are factors that when I go to Washington, D.C. in May to talk to folks at HUD, I want to share that with them. This is the reason why over the last 10 years, Richmond stopped applying for your grant. This is why City and County of San Francisco stopped applying for your grant. This is why, Oakland won't apply for your grant. So those are the things that I'm hoping that our elected officials can tell Congress, don't just take the money, but look into why the money is not being spent. Because if we can make some changes to Title X and get this money out more easily, I mean, that's what's going on now with the American Rescue Plan Act funding at the suggestion of County Supervisor Halbert. It was decided that Healthy Homes should move that money back over to HCD and find some other uses for it. They're going to look at some other ways to get that money into the community in order to improve housing. But admittedly, also some of it's going to go towards the emergency rental assistance program. The rental housing associations have been talking about they need some kind of landlord assistance center where Mom and pop landlords can get legal advice how to deal with their tenants, because many of their tenants supposedly took advantage of the eviction moratorium and didn't pay rent when they really could. And so landlords are hurting. And so looking at different ways to use the ARPA money, I think has to be done for the HUD-led hazard control grant money. I think HUD-led hazard control grant money, it includes a portion that is called healthy housing money, where you can do other repairs associated with lead paint remediation. I think healthy housing money should be used to help support and encourage cities and counties to do proactive rental inspection programs. Because again, you can give me all the money in the world, but if I can't get landlords to apply for it, then what's the point? But if I have that leverage, we've inspected your unit, we know that there's problems there, then I might be able to spend that money.
Okay, thank you. Others who have questions or comments? Director Gaio?
Yes, you made reference to the mold, the legislation for mold. Is the county involved in some way, like we are with the lead issue? Because that seems to be a number of concerns that I'm getting now with the rains and all that. And then there's several apartment facilities and units that have been shut down and due to the mold that's being created. So does the county have a program, or is your department involved with that as well?
Yes, we had a strategy and it was called SB 655. It actually goes even beyond 2016. It actually goes all the way back to 1999 when I was a subject matter expert with Senator Deborah Ortiz to pass the nation's first Toxic Mold Act, where we acknowledge that mold is a problem and it affects people's health. Unfortunately, under that law, the Department of Public Health was told, you go study it and you come up with permissible exposure limits that you can give to people like Larry so that they can go in and they can test for mold and then say, okay, this is bad, this is good. After years of analysis, research, money spent, they came back and said, mold is everywhere. Mold is here now in the air. We can't come up with a permissible exposure limit for code enforcement. So we went back to the drawing board, and that's why we ended up getting SB 655 passed, which simply says that if you see it, you can write a notice of violation on it. And so all local code enforcement officers now can enforce mold under SB 655.
Yeah.
But again, at the Code Enforcement Association Board of Directors meeting, we talked about how the state is saying that code enforcement officers are reluctant to go out and enforce mold. Some of them still believe, I don't know enough about it. Others are just saying it's going to add to my workload and my city and county is not going to pay for some additional code enforcement officers, so I'm going to duck and dodge it as much as possible. And that's the narrative that we're trying to change. Healthy Homes, when we receive a call, we always tell them, contact your local code enforcement office. Here's the information on SB 655. Don't let them tell you that, oh, we don't have the authority to do it. No, they do. And if that's a problem, then contact your elected officials and let them know that code enforcement is trying to avoid the work that they're responsible for.
When you refer to code enforcement, who is that?
That would be, say, the staff in Oakland's Building and Planning Department under Chief Building Official Christopher Ragland.
All right, well, thank you. Does the county also have that?
County has, in the unincorporated area where we're responsible, we have to enforce under SB 655. We just did a webinar for our code enforcement folks in the unincorporated area about 2 weeks ago.
Thank you.
Yeah. Is there special certification required for mold removal like there is with asbestos and lead, or can any contractor remove mold?
There are certifications, but they're not required.
They're not required.
Yeah, that's something we've been talking with the Department of Public Health about. The ideal model, and I talked with some of their folks yesterday, and we're going to continue those discussions. The ideal model to me would be just like with lead paint remediation. You go in, you identify lead hazards, you hire someone who's certified to do a lead inspection risk assessment. They identify what has to be remediated. Then you hire a separate person who is certified as a lead hazard remediation specialist, and they come in and then they do the removal, and then somebody else goes in and checks to make sure that it was done properly. That way you don't have conflict of interest. I remember many years ago, I had a mold problem, and some people came out and ended up literally demolishing my unit because they said, oh, we detect mold, and guess what, Larry? You're so lucky because we also do mold remediation. We want a lead model where you have people certified to identify the mold hazards and other people certified to go in and do the remediation so that you avoid that conflict of interest. Now, that may take us years to get through the legislature, but that's where we want to eventually go. But for now, a code enforcement officer can say, I can see it, I can smell it, hire a contractor to get rid of it. And it doesn't have to be someone who's certified.
Director Hardy, you want to pull the microphone down and push the button?
I know so, and oftentimes when I speak before groups, I do share that bit of history along with Congressman Stokes in terms of the role that People United for a Better Life in Oakland played in the creation of our department, as well as the contributions that you have made. And in terms of the mold issue, it does tie into the lead issue as well, and part of the training that we provided to code enforcement officers. And we've also been asked to speak to the rental housing associations too on mold. When you're going in to address mold, oftentimes if it's an old house, to remove that mold, you're going to end up removing some lead-based paint. And in that regard, Director Wingraf, people do have to be certified to do mold remediation when it's going to involve the removal of lead-based paint as well as asbestos, which people may run into when they're doing mold remediation work.
Okay. Seeing no other comments on item 4, we'll go to item 5, which is the monthly report. Ladise?
Yeah, I just want to highlight, we held a focus group. This is a focus group where we invited property owners from your cities to give us their feedback on proposed program services that we're into developing. We're thinking about launching an online portal exclusive to property owners where they can get early access information, online tutorials, webinars, also tools such as owner's manual, quick reference guides, and checklist. And also, we asked them about what linkages and resources they would find helpful. We just had one focus group, but the plan is to continue to hear from the community, from the property owners, to see what services they would find helpful. So if I will give you more information on those proposed services later when we're finalized. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any public comment on item 5?
No public comment.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from directors on item 5? Including item 5. Item 6 is future agenda items. Are there any members here who wish to ask for a future agenda item that would be placed on a future agenda that we could discuss a date or time for? We have several, as you see at the bottom of the agenda. I want to thank Ladise and everyone at the the department for putting together what we've previously requested and putting it out on a timeline for us. Is there anybody who has a request today? Okay, seeing none. Item 7 is announcements by members of the Board of Directors. Are there any members here who need to make an announcement today? Seeing no announcements, we'll move to item 8, which is adjournment. Ladisi, the time is 10:20. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you.